All right, good morning everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know it's Monday morning, but we're very excited that you are here to be a part of the Zero Waste Tennessee webinar. And this one is entitled just Zero Waste Tennessee, giving an overview of the program, the week, the many different events that we've got going on. This is the very first event of this week's festivities, but I will let Kelsey get more into that once she talks about, Zero Waste Tennessee. This webinar is being put on by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation in collaboration with the Tennessee Environmental Council and the Zero Waste Program at Metro Nashville. My name is Caleb Powell, and I'm an environmental scientist for the Office of Sustainable Practices at TDEC, and I will be hosting today's webinar and another webinar at the end of the week for the Zero Waste Tennessee week, and we'll have more information about that towards the end. Everyone is muted upon entry to reduce the amount of background noise, but if you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to ask those in the chat, and I'll work on getting those answered or sent to Kelsey for her to answer those. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm going ahead and sending a chat message to everyone, so you see where that chat box is. You can get sort of accustomed with sending messages in there. Now, whenever you do look down on that chat box, you'll see a drop down where you can see who you send it to. Now make sure that it's all panelists, all participants, or hosts. Make sure it's at least one of those, just so that I will be able to see that message and work on getting your problem fixed or your questions answered. There's also like a little hand emoji that you can put up if you'd like to ask your question yourself. If I see your hand emoji go up, I will unmute you and you can ask that question yourself. If there is nothing else, I'd like to introduce Kelsey Davis. She's a good friend, a colleague of mine. She's an environmental consultant in our office, the Office of Sustainable Practices here at TDEC. She's sort of the mastermind behind Zero Waste Tennessee. So Kelsey, thanks for joining us, and I'll kick it over to you to tell us more about what Zero Waste Tennessee is.
So like you said, today we're going to be talking about Zero Waste Tennessee, which is one of our programs. And I'm also going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the activities that we have planned for this week that I'm really excited about. Caleb, next slide. So we have several different webinars that we are partnering with TEC and Metro Nashville Zero Waste Program to host this week. So this first one today is kind of an overview of what Zero Waste is and kind of some of the a little bit more in depth into some of the zero waste concepts and kind of let you guys know about some of the local resources that we have here in Tennessee that can help you eliminate, waste in your own homes, in your businesses, wherever you may be. Next slide. Okay, so first I just want to talk about what is zero waste. A lot of folks get intimidated when they think zero waste at first because they take it very literally and think that we're, really reaching for absolutely no waste, none in the landfill. And while that's ultimately, the whole goal, we want to start with small steps and kind of thinking about a perception change to begin with. So it kind of requires rethinking what we have traditionally regarded as garbage or trash, and instead kind of thinking about those materials as the valued resources that they actually are. So zero waste kind of entails shifting our consumption patterns, which includes basically making more conscious purchasing decisions and maximizing the reuse of materials at the end of their useful life. So zero waste includes eliminating or preventing waste at the source and also implementing waste reduction strategies further up the supply chain, such as reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting, which we're all going to talk a lot more about this week. So in nature, there's no such thing as waste. In nature, the byproduct of one system is a feedstock for another system. So only humans actually generate what we refer to as waste. So zero waste promotes the highest and best use of any materials that we're using. So it focuses on eliminating those unnecessary wastes and pollutions that only humans create. So by adopting these principles that we're going to talk a little bit about today, we can not only greatly reduce our impact on Tennessee's natural resources, but we can also preserve and protect our resources for future generations. So ultimately, the whole point of that whole spiel was just to let you know that zero waste is all about producing less waste. Okay, next slide. So in response to a lot of the increasing waste management challenges that we're having here in Tennessee, and just ultimately a need for change and improvement with the way we manage our waste, our office actually developed this program, the Zero Waste Tennessee program, and it's designed to help inform businesses and just Tennessee residents in general on how to make better choices and just rethink the way that we manage our waste. And the program is designed to also have resources, tips on how to begin working towards those zero waste goals, and includes things on, the resources include things on what you can and can't put into a compost pile, how to create a waste audit, how to begin reducing waste in your everyday life, on the road, traveling, and even DIY composting resources. So we have a lot of resources that we've developed that I will share with you guys towards the end of this presentation. But the overall goal of the program is to just empower Tennesseans to make better decisions. Next slide. Okay, so now we've learned a little bit about what is zero waste and the resources and program that we have at TDEC. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about why zero waste is important. And I like to use stats a lot in my PowerPoint presentation, so the next few slides have a lot of numbers on them, but they're very important as to why zero waste is, a big concern and something we're really trying to educate folks on. So did you know that Americans actually make up 4%, only 4% of the entire world's population, but we generate 40% of the world's total waste? Is that not crazy? So Tennesseans in general generate approximately 6.6 pounds of waste per person per day, and that's higher than the national average of 4.4 pounds per person per day. And that's nearly triple the global average of 2.6 pounds per day. So overall, Tennessee's not doing too great in our waste generation. So every year, TDEC's Division of Solid Waste Management releases a report, and that report states that in 2018, 6.77 million Tennesseans produced 8.1 million tons of waste. And if you guys have lived in Tennessee for the past couple of years, you also know that our population is increasing rapidly, so that means our tons of waste are probably also increasing as well since 2018. So 8.1 million tons of waste we produced in 1 year alone in our state. So many people don't really understand why landfilling is such a concern, and that's honestly mostly due to the fact that most people don't really understand how landfills work. Most folks just kind of throw something away, and after, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, it's gone. But since landfills don't really work that way, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about how they do work and why we should kind of rethink those decisions. So landfills are actually sealed for our safety. The materials inside a landfill break down anaerobically, and that means they break down without oxygen. So there's two main reasons why this is actually a concern. So first, most people assume that when our waste is buried in landfills that it just decomposes, breaks down and kind of goes back into the soil over time. But that's actually not true. Landfills are designed to not allow materials to break down, to not allow them to leak through. There's liners, layers of sand, clay, synthetic, all kinds of different pipes and probes that they use to detect any leaks to make sure that no leaks are happening. And the reason they're designed that way is because any leaks from the landfills could actually pollute our water sources, our soil, and they could, cause problems for us. So they're designed to not be able to leak, to not allow oxygen into them. So additionally, for natural decomposition to occur, the oxygen has to be there. The living organisms that cause composting or decomposition that occurs naturally in nature have to have oxygen to live. So they can't live in a landfill, so they don't actually break down any of the organic matter that's put into a landfill. So that actually results in anaerobic decomposition, and the reason that that is a concern is because when landfills go through anaerobic decomposition, they release harmful gases known as greenhouse gases. Methane is a really large one that they release. And those negatively affect the environment. So methane is actually the most potent greenhouse gas, and that's the one that landfills release the most of. Okay, so that's the first main problem with landfilling our trash. The second one is that it's also a really huge lost opportunity when it comes to organics, because organics are valuable nutrients for our ecosystem. And when these materials are allowed to decompose in a landfill, the resulting nutrients that could have occurred do not get to go back to our earth. They don't go back to the soil, and they don't get the opportunity to nourish anything else. So basically, the organic matters are wasted. Okay, next slide. So this one is a little bit more about methane, which is the greenhouse gas that we just talked about that landfills emit. So why is that a concern? Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, and it's actually 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. So that's why it's such a concern. Over the last 2 centuries, methane concentrations in the atmosphere have more than doubled, and that's largely due to human-related activities. So you can see in this chart that the third largest emitter of methane is, it says MSW landfill. So if you aren't familiar, that means municipal solid waste, which is basically residential landfills. That's where your and my trash goes. So that just means Tennessee residents are creating the third highest methane emissions in our state. So that's kind of a concern that allows us a lot of opportunity, at least. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. But the methane emissions in 2019 were equivalent to the greenhouse gas emissions of more than 21.6 million passenger vehicles driven for 1 year. So that's pretty epic. You can see that they're only third in line to natural gas and petroleum systems, and then enteric fermentation in livestock. Next slide. Okay, so earlier, 2 slides ago, if you remember, I told you that in 2018, Tennesseans produced 8.1 million tons of waste. So that's a ton of waste, but it actually emits the equivalent of 2,524 tons of carbon dioxide daily. So that's on a daily basis. Just to wrap your head around those numbers, I like to do kind of some conversions. So we're going to do some waste tonnage equivalents. So the 2,524 tons of carbon dioxide daily is the equivalent of 284,010 gallons of gasoline consumed, 427 homes electricity powered for 1 year, 536 passenger vehicles on the road for 1 year, and 94% of landfill emissions in the U.S. are emitted by municipal solid waste landfills. So those are just some stats that I put together to kind of let you guys know how big of an impact this is and how important it is for us to just make small changes in our everyday life to kind of try to reduce some of those numbers to get us down. And municipal solid waste landfills received approximately 69% of the total waste generated in the United States. So out of that pie that we saw earlier, municipal solid landfills receive 69% of the total waste generated. That means that residents, just like you and I, are the ones creating the most trash. It's not coming from construction, demolition, from other different types of landfills. It's coming from municipal solid waste landfills. Okay, so what can we do about it? Now we've learned what it is and why it's important. So let's learn how we go zero waste. What can we do? So the zero waste hierarchy was designed with impact in mind. So that's why they're listed in order of most to least preferred. But it is important to note that it's not necessary to do every single step throughout the hierarchy, and it's not actually necessary to do them in order. Just when you're thinking about the hierarchy, or if you want to, save this to go back and refer to it, make sure that you just do the ones that are applicable to you at your current location, at your current time. Even if you just do one of these steps, you still make a positive impact and can reduce your overall waste. They're just listed in order of the greatest impact. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. And then in the next few slides, I have some examples that I do, that some of our coworkers do, and some of the folks who participate in this program participate. And along the way, if you have any ideas or maybe things that you do in your own household, please feel free to put those in the chat box so that we can all share our zero waste tips and hopefully learn a few things and learn some things that we can implement in our own homes and lives every day. Okay, so the first step of the zero waste hierarchy is to rethink. So that basically just means we need to adjust our behavior as a consumer and make purchasing choices that limit your impact on the environment. The next step is to reduce, and that is to be mindful of unnecessary wasteful items and to avoid them or learn to live without them. The third step is to reuse. So this one is really important, and it really involves giving possessions a second life, and that can be through creative reuse, repurposing, repair, or donating those items so that someone else can reuse them. The fourth step is a very important step, but it is number 4 because hopefully we can rethink, reduce, and reuse before we ever need to recycle. But recycling is to use existing products to create new ones and to reduce dependence on virgin materials. And then last but not least is to re-earth or compost, and that is to divert your organics, which is the single largest waste stream, from landfills. Okay, next slide. So let's talk a little bit more about rethinking. It is the first step in the hierarchy, so it is the most important, and the key notion consists of purchasing only what's truly needed, maybe opting for local products that have maybe a minimal impact or less of an impact from something that has been shipped in from another country, maybe kind of focusing on items with minimal packaging, maybe no packaging is even better. And then when you do, make those purchasing decisions as a consumer, try to focus on items that are durable, items that maybe contain recycled content or are recyclable themselves. So I really just want to stress that as a consumer, every purchase made is an opportunity to vote for zero waste. So when you're supporting these items that have recycled content in them, or items that are, the company has taken the effort to make sure that it is a zero waste item, you're supporting that company, therefore you're supporting zero waste actions. So as a consumer, you actually have a lot of power to vote with your dollar. So a few things that I do and that a few other folks that participate in this program do to rethink our everyday purchasing items and to reduce waste are to purchase items in bulk. So I actually shop at Costco. I like it because they have larger amounts of products with equal or less packaging. So instead of, purchasing like 4 boxes of something, they have the same quantity packaged in the same amount of packaging. So you're reducing your overall impact. Another good one is to use your local library or to join a book sharing club if you're an avid reader, as opposed to always, going and buying a brand new book as soon as it gets released. There's a ton of other options that you can reduce your impact as far as sharing books, in your book club, or just using your local library and, not actually purchasing each individual book that you want to read. Another really good one, like we have photoed here, is to avoid plastic drink bottles by bringing your own refillable thermos or bottle. And that's, a really easy thing to do, especially when you're traveling on the road, going to a gas station or whatever. You don't have to get one of the styrofoam or paper cups. You can bring your own refillable, reusable cup. And then another good option is to stay digital as much as possible when you're traveling, or anytime you make a purchase. You can avoid printing that if it's not necessary and just get digital copies, or a lot of folks don't even get receipts anymore. And then there's a lot of other good opportunities if you're in the workplace that you can, to avoid using paper. There's a ton of good digital apps for note-taking versus, writing everything down and then trying to keep up with a piece of paper. There's a lot of really good digital options to avoid that unnecessary waste. Okay, so the next step is to reduce. Step number 2. Okay, and this one is all about eliminating or finding alternatives to unnecessary wasteful items. A few examples listed here are disposable straws, plastic shopping bags, and then switching to online subscriptions versus, magazine subscriptions, book subscriptions like we just talked about, and also unsubscribing from junk mail. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't receive as much junk mail as we do, but unfortunately we do. There's actually this website that you can go to that we have linked in our zero waste resources that I will share with you at the end of this PowerPoint. That it's basically a website you just go to and you put in your information and it will unsubscribe you from junk mail, which is awesome. But these simple acts can prevent large amounts of waste by simply avoiding it in the first place. So this one is also a very high impact opportunity in the zero waste hierarchy. So a few things that I do is that to eliminate the need for to-go or convenience store packaging. So anytime you're traveling, if you're on a work trip, if you're on a family trip, just to bring your own reusable things, bring your own containers, pack your own snacks. That way you're not having to use that to-go packaging either through a drive-through or either through, a convenience station, because the vast majority of that stuff is not recyclable and it is not compostable. So it's all about avoiding those decisions that brings waste into your life that you don't have a sustainable option with, right? So just avoid it in the first place. Another good tip is to use rewashable or reusable cloths. So there's a ton of different things in our everyday lives that folks use disposable cloths for: cleaning, makeup remover, all sorts of stuff. But if you just use a reusable cloth for cleaning items in your home, in your bathroom, you can use reusable washable fabric rounds for makeup and things like that. Cotton balls, disposable makeup remover wipes, all those sorts of things are wasteful and can be eliminated just by using something that's reusable. And then another one that I avidly do is bring my own bags, tote bags of any sort. It doesn't have to be just for groceries. Anytime you go in somewhere, I feel like having a bag with you is always super handy. So I literally keep just like a stash of bags in the trunk of my car, and then I keep some smaller ones in my glove box. You just never know. So that has saved me a lot of plastic throughout the years. Okay, next slide is to reuse. This one I feel like folks get a really good grasp on. It's something that has been traditionally promoted as far as, reuse, recycle, that sort of thing. But a lot of folks limit it to buying secondhand and donating. But there's one that I really want to focus on, and that is renting. So reusing items, of course, reuse containers and things that you have in your own home. Then you can also shop at thrift stores and donate. But there's a website that we also link in our zero waste resource that you can basically find anything that you might ever need to rent, something that you're just going to need maybe once in a blue moon. There's no really reason to purchase that item. And they have things, as far as from like kayaks to tools, clothing, dresses for weddings. I can't tell you how many bridesmaids dresses I've had to purchase throughout the years. They have all kinds of stuff like that that you can just rent once, save the money on not having to purchase it, and then let someone else reuse it. So I thought that was a really cool concept when I was kind of digging into the zero waste world that I had never really thought about. And now I've, anytime me and my husband have a farm, and anytime we need a tool versus just going and buying it for that one item we may need, we always look into renting it out, even if it's not from this specific website that I'm referring to. There's tons of different local rental options that are definitely worth looking into. But a lot of the things that I try to buy secondhand and then also donate as well, because, they're popular and folks, there's a market for secondhand items like this. But books, I'm really big on not purchasing new books, so I either buy or use used books. And then tools, toys, purses, and bags, home decor, dishes and cookware, kitchen appliances, all kinds of things. And then, of course, clothing. That's a really big one, too. So get creative with your reuse items. If you think there's not a new way to reuse it, I can almost guarantee you that there is. Okay, next is to recycle. This one's, hopefully the most well-known in the hierarchy. Again, it is an important step. It is a impactful step for the items that actually work for recycling. Unfortunately, there are some items as far as plastic that recycling is really not that effective. Every time you recycle plastic, it takes virgin material and a very, very small amount of plastic that, actually gets put in the recycling bin actually ends up being recycled, mostly because a lot of folks do what's called wish cycling, and just because it's made out of plastic, they think they can put it in their recycling bin, and then it contaminates the whole load, and then that whole load never gets recycled to begin with. So there's a lot of problems with some items in the recycling market as well. So that's why if you are going to recycle, we really stress folks educate themselves on the topic, educate themselves on their local convenience center rules in their county, what they're accepting. And we're actually going to have a really good webinar later this week that will be put on by Metro Nashville about some, Middle Tennessee and statewide recycling tips. So if you guys want to tune into that, that will be this Wednesday. And I'll share the link for this week's webinars in the chat box at the end. But there are a few things that fortunately are still very successful in the recycling industry, and aluminum, cardboard, and paper are some of those items that are still successful, and we definitely encourage folks to recycle. Okay, last but not least is to re-earth. And this one is a really important step. Even though it's last, it targets about 22% of the waste that still goes into landfills. And that's the one we were talking about that releases all of that methane. So it's a very, very important step. An estimated 40% of food that is produced in the United States actually ends up in landfills. So somewhere between where that food was grown and when it gets to our house, it's wasted, about 40% of it. So not only can that food waste be composted, but so can other organic materials that also end up in landfills. Things such as yard debris, shredded paper or sold paper products that might not, be able to be recycled. All of those things can be composted and still kept out of landfills. So composting is a really environmentally friendly option, and it's a very effective option at keeping our greenhouse gases down. I have two different resources linked here. One of them is the residential composting option, and what that is a list of service providers that we have here in Tennessee. If some of you guys live in, larger metropolitan areas, I can almost guarantee you that you have a service provider that I highly recommend looking into. They basically just pick up your waste, or a lot of them now are having convenient locations where you can bring your own organics and just drop it off. And then also we have a backyard composting brochure. And that's a really good option for folks who live in a more rural or even suburban area. You just need a small area to actually compost in my backyard. And it's very easy. Folks think that it's going to be very time consuming, but I can honestly tell you it can be as time consuming or not as you want it to be. And either way, you're going to be reducing your food waste and potentially reducing, your trash. So backyard composting is a really, really good option. So another aspect, next slide please, of the Zero Waste TN program is our partners. So we try to highlight other entities throughout the state who are taking these zero waste initiatives. We want consumers to know about these sustainable initiatives that they're taking, and we want to highlight their efforts, to use their efforts as case studies and to provide resources to other individuals who might be interested in going zero waste but don't really know where to get started. So if you know of an organization or if you work for an organization that might be interested, we have a zero waste partner form that you basically just fill out. It just gives your name, contact information, maybe some of the zero waste practices that your entity engages in. And then we are working on a statewide map that we are hoping to be able to launch soon. That's kind of like an interactive map that showcases all of these different businesses, institutions, nonprofits, organizations, whatever it may be. So please feel free to share that opportunity with anyone that you think may be interested. Okay, next slide. So these are the resources that we have on our Zero Waste website, which I have linked right there. And we have a lot of different resources. We wanted to kind of make it comprehensive for anyone from just, a family in Tennessee or to a, high-scale, large manufacturing business. So we have comprehensive resources that go all the way from how to conduct a waste audit, and that really just takes you through the steps of identifying what your biggest waste stream is. We've done a few of these in my office, and I always find it very interesting that seem to think they know what their highest, waste is, whether it's, plastic packaging or whether it's food. But 9 times out of 10, they're wrong. So you don't really know what you should be focusing on until you conduct a waste audit, and it will actually help you identify where your biggest problem is, because that's definitely where you want to start, right? You want to be able to identify your biggest impact, and that way you have the biggest opportunity for improvement. We also have this food waste decision tree that I have added here on the right-hand side. It's a little small in the PowerPoint presentation, but the full-size version is on our website. And it basically is designed to just kind of help walk you through the questions and the steps needed to kind of figure out what your options are and what might be best suited for you in your waste reduction journey. We also have a guide to create organics collection program for your office. And this is actually one that we modeled in our own office, so I can tell you that it is effective. And it just kind of takes you through the steps of what is necessary, some things to think through, what your different options are if you're looking to, kind of create some sort of food waste reduction program within your workspace. We also have an organics collection guide, and that is for anybody basically looking to figure out what can go into your organics collection bin. We use that in restaurant training. You can use it as a flyer in your office. You can use it and put it on your refrigerator at home. It's a very good resource. We also have the compost service providers, and that's what I mentioned earlier. We have 7 different providers throughout the state, ranging all the way from Memphis to Johnson City. If you guys did not know that, I recommend you checking out that resource. It has grown a lot in the past few years just since I've been working on this program, so we're excited to see a lot more compost service providers come in the state. There's also deciphering product labels, biodegradable versus compostable. I recommend you check that one out because they are not the same thing, and if you're going to go on a compost journey, it's definitely worth checking out. And then the composting at home brochure that I mentioned earlier, and that just kind of walks you through site selection, what can and can't go in your bins, kind of the ratio, and what's expected to kind of maintain your compost pile. Next slide. Okay, so that was a lot of information. You learned about the hierarchy, what zero waste is, some of the impacts of our waste system here in Tennessee. So it's kind of overwhelming, and you're like, cool, I really like the zero waste thing. I'm interested, but where do I start? How do I begin? And so what I recommend is, next slide, to start on our Zero Waste Day. So Tennessee actually has a Zero Waste Day. This is our 3rd annual time to celebrate it. It is annually on October 27th, so it's this Thursday. And I recommend that you take the Zero Waste Challenge. So what we do is we encourage citizens to participate in the Zero Waste Challenge, which is to rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle, and re-earth. And the challenge participation opens up on October 27th, which is this Thursday. And we basically just encourage you to document your day, and you can either post pictures or you can, share some of your tips that you use throughout the day. And then folks will use the hashtags Let's Go Zero Waste and Zero Waste Day Tennessee. That way we can track your tips, we can track your engagement, and then we will hopefully create a cute resource like I'm about to share on the next slide. We put together a video from our first year's participants. We had a ton of really good tips, so we use it as a resource as well. And then the other thing that you can do besides taking the Zero Waste Challenge is to come visit us this Thursday at the Goodfield West Nashville location. We will be hosting a Zero Waste Take Back event. So we are actively trying to help you guys reduce waste in your home. So we are going to be accepting miscellaneous and hard to recycle items such as batteries, bulbs, CDs, ink cartridges, and small electronics. And these are from residential households only, but we will be there from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is the Goodfield hours, so we'll be there all day. and we, guarantee that these items will be properly recycled. So we'll be keeping them out of landfills and helping you to do the same. And then also, if you want to learn more about our Zero Waste Day and some of the other things going on this week, you can always follow us on our Facebook and Instagram pages, because we will be making a lot of posts this week with a lot of good tips. Okay, Caleb, I'm going to let you share the video now. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you've learned a few things about zero waste and how to begin your own zero waste journey. But if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will do my best to answer those. I'm also going to go ahead and put the link for this week's schedule in the chat if you guys are interested in learning more. Thank you guys for being here.
Hey, Kelsey, I just had one question. Someone in the audience asked if the slides will be made available to the attendees. It's sort of like a follow-up. How are you guys going to go about sort of sharing presentations from the different webinars this week?
Yes. Okay. So to register, they do have to put in their email address, right, Caleb?
Correct.
Yes. So what we were planning on doing is at the end of the week, we will share the PowerPoint slides from all the different presentations. So we will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we'll probably send them out next Monday just to give time to kind of get all of the different email addresses from the different organizations. But we're basically just going to send out one comprehensive resource with the recordings as well as the PowerPoint slides.
Awesome. And okay, there's one or two more things. First off, just I don't see any questions coming in, so if you have questions or think of them later, feel free to jump on some of the webinars we have coming on later this week and ask those questions. I know Kelsey and our other co-hosts of the Zero Waste Week will, or Zero Waste Day week, will be happy to answer any of those questions that you might have. Thanks, Kelsey, number one, for just giving us all this great information, but also for the work that you do for Zero Waste Day and over the last couple of years. And we're excited to see Zero Waste Day grow and all the different people sort of give their tips and tricks on how they find to best reduce, reuse, recycle, and re-earth. I wanted to bring attention to the next webinar that I will actually be hosting, and that's the Friday webinar. I know everyone has their phones, so go ahead and bring your phone out, bring the camera out, and put in this QR code. This is going to be for Friday, October 28th, and that's at 10:30 a.m. Same as today, same time, Central Time, 10:30 a.m. And it's going to be talking about re-earthing resources in Tennessee. So go ahead. I'm going to let this sit up here for a couple more minutes. Probably not a couple more minutes, maybe just 1 minute. But bring your phone out, get the QR code, and then that should bring you straight to the registration for this amazing webinar that you don't want to miss on Friday. So I think that is all that we've got. Have a great day, Kelsey. Thanks for all you do, and we hope to see everybody on the upcoming webinars.
Everyone.